Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Volume 16, Chapter 1, and yes, pretty much the second half of, I guess, this little segment right here, because Ors is still around. We got to talk to him. I'm a little miffed because there's, like, something in this first chapter that I'm like, are we not going to address the elephant in the room? There's, like, something sitting right here that we're not going to address, but we'll get into that when we get into it. But pretty solid set of chapters. Pretty long as well, so I figured probably the first two chapters here is going to be this one, but we'll see as usual. As per usual, thank you everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Thanks everybody for your support, kind words, checking out the videos and all that kind of stuff. It really is appreciated. And as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, all that good stuff. It means so much to me. It's you guys that keep the stuff going. But yeah, with that all said, let's jump right into Chapter 1. The first mission. After being deceived by the man god, hitting rock bottom, and fighting Orsted, Rudius found himself becoming his subordinate. Yes, that's right, Rudius had found himself an employer. That shock aside, he was also reunited with Edis and married her. His life suddenly was bustling with renewed vigor, and he was on his way to work. This time, alone, as a man should be when he commutes. To be fair, it was pretty normal in his household for the women to work too, so there was nothing wrong with him bringing someone along. But Orsted's curse meant that they be hostile towards him, so it was best to go alone. I like how this beginning segment, he's acting like he's in the car driving to work, like, I'm an adult now. This is Rudius, the man-child. It's like, yes, my first time actually commuting to work properly, like a man should. He'll take his wins when he can get them. As he arrived at the cottage, he spotted someone collapsed on the ground. Zenoba! It was Zenoba! He's dead! He was thumped against a 3-meter-tall hunk of metal laying on his back. Rudius rushed over to his side, shaking him. This can't be happening. Come on, this can't be real. Zenoba, speak to me. He had a pulse, and he was breathing. Okay, he was definitely alive. He had me scared to death. Why was he sleeping here? Royalty should be in a nice, soft bed or something. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cheap. I read it, and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to be a thing. Like, are we literally going to have Zenoba die when he's not even around? But yeah, when it said the hunk of metal, I immediately was like, okay, he went out and got his suit. As he sighed relief, Orsted stepped out of the cottage.
Rudius, so you have arrived.
Oh, yes, I have.
Last night, Zenoba Sharon carried that thing here.
What thing?
The armor you used earlier in battle.
Rudius realized that it was indeed his magic armor. It was unrecognizable in pieces. Then he remembered that he said something about it being destroyed and that he'd have to go out and retrieve it soon. And you two happened to run into each other in the process, and you fought?
Indeed.
Zenoba probably never dreamed that Orsted would be there. Rudius regretted not telling him sooner, but he never had a chance. Thankfully, it didn't look like he had any real injuries, so Orsted must have gone easy on him.
At the end of our battle, he swore he wouldn't let me get my hands on this armor. Said he'd make sure to deliver it to you. That's why he crawled the rest of the way to it. He certainly has taken a liking to you.
Oh, Zenoba. Rudius casted healing on Zenoba. It wasn't much use to the fact that he lacked external injuries, but he wanted him to sleep peacefully at least. Still, Orsted left him outside collapsed? Maybe he was more merciless than I gave him credit for. So will he wake up eventually?
I put him to sleep using a hypnosis magic passed down through the Nuka tribe. He should wake up in a few hours.
Very interesting magic. Could this allow him to manipulate a person's actions? Like using it on Sylphie to lift her skirt? Actually, she'd do that if he asked her. But he'd need to get a skirt for her first. However, if this magic was that powerful, Orsted would probably use it more. Putting someone to sleep was probably the extent of its usefulness. I am kind of curious about that, and I was surprised he didn't ask him about that. It's like, oh yeah, can you teach me that stuff?
Come inside. Let's resume our discussion from yesterday.
Draping his jacket over Zenoba and creating a shelter of earth magic around him, Rudius entered the cottage with Orsted. Meeting number 2.
Allow me to cut to the chase.
Orsted slapped the diary down on the table between them.
Quite a fascinating read. I have some interest in this magic regarding time travel that your future self spoke of. But since we lack the information to duplicate it ourselves, we'll need to leave it aside for now.
All right.
There was a number of things that caught my interest. But before we discuss the contents of this journal, I would like to know what you and the man god have spoken about in the past. Tell me everything. Spare no details.
Yes, of course. Yes, obviously he's going to be interested in the whole time travel thing, which it's kind of fascinating because I would assume that with the aspect of introducing the diary, you would assume that Rudius would have at least told him what Nanahoshi's theories were. He does eventually say, look, please go talk to Nanahoshi. I'm glad that finally Rudius is somewhat upset that he got Nanahoshi involved. Like, out of nowhere, he finally goes, oh, well, that was really mean that I did that to her. I hope I can fix things between them. And it's like, you're an idiot. Like, it goes back to my arguments that I've had the entire last volume is like, Rudius, seriously, dude. And it kind of hurts a little bit to finally kind of sort of see, not really see anything because this is Orsted, and so it seems like his expressions don't really show much except for when he's angry. It sucks to not really know, to get a sense but not really know if Orsted really is mad at her. Based on his replies to Rudius, you assume that, yeah, there is an obvious lack of trust there. If this is his journey and his whole focus is to do this one thing, obviously having her betray him, he's not going to want to trust her ever again. But it sort of does turn it into a thing of like, I don't want to trust her anymore, but she's useful. I can at least get something useful from her. So yeah, I guess I'll go back to her, but I'm never going to trust her again. Like, I don't see him ever trusting her again after that. And for a damn good reason. Unfortunately, I mean, I blame Rudius mostly for the sake that he pushed her to it, but she still chose to do it. She could have said no, which is sad to say that I think at the state that Rudius was in, he probably would have forced her hand somehow. But no, why I bring that up is because, yes, this technically brings up the idea of the time travel, and Rudius, with the theory that Nanahoshi has that, you know, they time traveled, so they might know something. So it's probably going to turn one of those things where eventually he'll go to see Nanahoshi, and then she'll tell him the theory. At this point, Rudius recounted everything that he remembered, each visit and when he visited, 10 times total. He also included what they spoke about, what was commanded of him, and how the instructions played out. Orsted listened quietly and didn't even nod. Yes, I'm not going to go through all that. Like, it literally recounts everything. I read through it very carefully to make sure that there wasn't a point in there in which it had Rudius point something out that he's never pointed out before, but it seemed like it was all just recap stuff. That's all. Did you get anything from all that?
Yes, I now understand exactly how he was using you. He used you to change the course of history.
History, you say?
Yes, ordinarily, the hand of fate is so strong that certain things should be immutable. But he found a way to circumvent that, using you.
Because my own fate is so strong?
Precisely.
So, Rudius' destiny was so powerful that he could change the course of history. That makes sense. If the idea is that he wants to change the path and go this direction from the set path, using him who has a strong destiny, he's able to push against things. And for one, there's a lower chance that he could die because he has a strong destiny. But additionally, he's able to sort of push things in that direction. And probably an extension, pull things with him. Which, yes, goes back to my theory that I had a long time ago that I'm still sticking to. And I think it kind of comes up here in a minute. But Sir Orsted, surely you could have done the same thing if you wanted to.
I could.
He slapped the top of the journal.
But I fail to see his goal in altering history this much.
Isn't it to avoid being killed?
Don't take his words at face value.
Ah, right. There was a possibility of him lying about all that. That is, I don't know, because it's brought up too much. I don't know necessarily that would be the case. Everything kind of lines up that it is all about preventing his death. But yeah, what if there's a possibility that there's something else? What if he doesn't care about his death, or maybe possibly he can't die? So he's just doing something else, and he's using that as sort of a way of, again, convincing Rudius. Well, obviously, I don't want to die. Let's go back to the original equation here. What if it's just simply that he's wanting to have fun with Rudius? He could still just be wanting to have fun. But it is interesting that he says that I fail to see what his goal is in altering history this much. Why would he want to do it this much? It makes me wonder if, obviously, Orsted can see this was the path that I've seen. This is the history that I've already seen. And none of it's going this direction. Again, everything that we've kind of pointed out already with like Edis and everybody around Rudius. Anything that involves Rudius is off the course. And he could probably see something further down the road with things like Ariel and stuff like that. And if he's seeing that how much it's you know, veering off the path compared to the journal itself versus what he's seen, he might be going, but why this? That could be what Orsted's seeing. Why would he do this? This doesn't make sense that he would take it this direction. This stuff right here doesn't mean anything. I guess the thing to note is, what does this have to do with his death? That would be the thing that I would see. What does this have to do with his death?
At any rate, there is one thing I do know for certain.
What's that?
Whatever lies at the end of this altered course of history is something that stands to benefit him.
Bingo. Makes sense.
In order to direct the future towards a course more beneficial to me, you will alter its current trajectory.
So, alter it, not correct it? That makes sense. It's not history yet, since it hasn't happened yet. History is whatever you make it. You're being awfully roundabout.
I am already laying plans for 100 years in the future. Everything that has happened so far, and will ever happen from here, is all groundwork. But Thanks to you and Nanahoshi, much of it has gone off track.
He keeps bringing it up. You two keep messing things up. You're messing things up. It kind of makes me wonder. It kind of goes to the whole thing with what was going on with Nanahoshi. And I think that was probably why he was helping her initially. Is like he's seen her out in that field and he's like, okay, what the heck are you doing here? After she learns the language, kind of finds out where she's from. And it could be one of those things of like, I don't see you in the history that I've seen. So I'll figure out a way to get you back. I think Orsted may have been trying to help her get her way back home because he wanted her out of the picture. You're an anomaly. You shouldn't be here. Get out of here. Which is kind of nice to think that he wouldn't kill her immediately just to get rid of that anomaly. Which again goes credit to the fact that Orsted is not a bad person. He just wants to get rid of the man god. He's not wanting to kill anybody, and he's going to defend himself. But he's only worried about getting rid of the man god. And yeah, I can kind of see him trying to help her out because of that. But he also said that she's extremely useful, and she may have proven that. 100 years, I guess he's been setting things up for a while. So he can't really change his plans now. Just to clarify, the two of us can't just go wherever the man god is and kick his butt, right?
Until we have collected the hidden treasures. We won't be able to reach the place he's in.
And I'm guessing we can't just gather those up real quick?
4 are easy to obtain, but Laplace holds the final piece. He won't revive for another 80 years. I will be the one gathering these treasures. You best not act on your own, understand?
I like how he adds that on the end of it. Okay, we're talking about this, but you do not touch them. They're mine. But yes, I don't think I noted that in the last Mushoku Monday. But yeah, that technically makes sense. He was one of the generals. So yes, obviously Laplace would be one that would hold them. It is kind of interesting, though, because in the writings of the future Rudius, yes, at some point he said that he discovered that path and that he had to gain those pieces. But then he said that he wasn't going to be able to find Laplace. This makes sense. If it was ordained that it was 80 years from now, he pretty much, older Rudius basically found that out. He didn't, of course, talk to Orsted, but he found out from some other method that possibly Laplace was the one. I don't think he named Laplace by name, which is kind of sad because I didn't think about that. Okay, Oldius, at some point, was trying to figure out how to get to the man god. He talked to Pedagogus. Pedagogus is like, I don't know. And then he was trying to find Orsted, couldn't find Orsted. He eventually finds out about that there's these treasures, but he at that time said that one of them, he had to wait for one of the generals to get it. And he said that he wasn't going to live long to see them. And you remember in the journal, it says specifically that Pedagogus ran to Laplace again and took him out. At least they imply that he took him out. That he brought up the man god to Laplace and Laplace got angry. Pedagogus took out Laplace before he could make the thing that old Rudius needed. Like, he was there. He was old enough that Laplace came around, which is kind of interesting to say that. Unless Pedagogus is talking about the previous time. But I think it was sort of implying the idea that he ran to Laplace again. He didn't know anything about the man god, got angry because he said it, and then he ended him. So, the journal, the diary was very vague. Act on his own? Rudius didn't even know where the treasures were. The diary mentioned that they were held by the 5 dragon generals, but Rudius only knew the whereabouts of one. Pedagogus. But wait, Chaos the maniacal dragon was dead, right? I heard that Lord Chaos has passed away. How are you going to deal with that?
I have already acquired the treasure that he held.
But hold up. What if the man god has already foreseen that we'll try to change the future? I mean, what if I'd be digging our graves by taking action? Or mine, at the very least.
No. In addition to his power of foresight, I believe it's also highly likely he has a special trait that makes all living creatures of this world trust him unconditionally. That has left him ill-equipped to deal with irregularities.
That's very interesting. So reverse to Orsted, it's likely that he has an ability that allows people to trust him versus fear him. That sort of opens up a question mark as to yes, technically the connection is the fact that they're both, dragon folk, but how that technically may possibly connect them directly. I hope it's not a thing like the man god is like a brother of Orsted or something like that. I don't even think that's going to be true, possibly, but chat, shut up. Reese never realized the possibility of the man god having a curse of his own, but saying people trusted him unconditionally was a stretch, as Rudius never trusted him. Then again, Orsted's curse didn't work on him. Maybe the man god's curse didn't either. It did seem like he was having a hard time dealing with his constant skepticism, and he never trusted him in the end. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Maybe his curse wasn't entirely ineffective after all. Maybe Rudius' resistance to Orsted's curse might wear off eventually. But no, there wasn't a guarantee that Orsted's information was reliable. His assumptions about the nature of the man god's curse might not be entirely correct. It's nice to kind of question that. Contemplating all this, Rudius started to doubt everything, leading him to drop it all together. He's done that before where he gets like way down this rabbit hole, and at some point he's like, okay, this is getting me. And most of the time it's because he's thinking of dark things that are making him emotionally unstable, things that are depressing him, things that make him think that he caused a disaster or a problem for somebody else, or like with Paul, getting him killed. It is one of those things where he like goes down that rabbit hole, and then at some point he goes, okay, I gotta stop this. Just drop it. Just drop it. Let's just move on. Next topic. But yeah, I think it is interesting to kind of question all that stuff. And it is kind of curious. Yes, maybe that might be the case for a lot of the other people that the man god's going to be pulling in. This idea that he might actually control them. And I guess it does make sense that might be the reason why the man god may have gotten frustrated a lot, is the idea of like, it's to the credit of what happened with after Future Rudius showed up. The man god got really angry because the man god was working on Rudius for a long time to get his trust. And he's like, normally all I have to do is say, hey, go handle this. And they're like, yes, sir, that sounds great. I can trust you. With Rudius, he's been like, you're a door-to-door salesman. I don't want to trust you. You're trying to scam me. And he's like, wait, this is not normal. Why is, oh crap, this guy is not affected by my curse. But we'll have to see. I hope that eventually we get into somebody else that has been talking to the man god, namely Luke, which we'll get into in a minute. And maybe eventually at that point, we'll probably get that feeling of like, yeah, this person is almost like, sort of like a cultist. Like, they just believe everything the man god says, and there's no questioning it. And that'll probably be the sign there. Not so much that they'll be like, you know, a puppet, and they just speaking whatever the man god wants. More so the idea that they are convinced, in their own mind, physically convinced, this person can be trusted, and you're lying to me. The man god would never lie to me. I think that'll be the sign. I'm not good at this whole guessing what my opponent has planned thing. Do you really think we can win this? He then replied confidently,
I do. Our enemy isn't invincible. I am only one step away from ending him.
One step? It's like, he's talking about like at least 80 years because of the other key from Laplace, but he's like, yeah, one more step. That's a step? You got some broad step in there. Or it sounded like he was reassuring himself instead of Rudius. Still, he intended on winning and was determined to claim that victory. That part was promising. I do appreciate that. It's not so much because he says that he said it confidently. Then he said that he's reassuring himself. And yes, that could be a thing of like, there's no question. I have to do it. I'm not going to say, maybe, I'm trying. Yeah, I'm going to do it. It's more of a thing of like, I have to. I would think that if you've lived as long as he has, over 2,000 years, there's no question. If that's been your whole goal, there's no question. You have to do it.
So, we will change the course of the near future.
The near future?
Yes. We will make the second princess, Ariel Anamoy Asura, the king of the Asura kingdom.
Okay, that was great. Reyes was thinking about how he wanted to help her out. If this was his first mission, it was a welcome one. He made a good call, taking a job at this company. You didn't have a choice. It's like, yeah, it's those one jobs where they literally would say, you join this job or you die. Okay, I'm glad I joined that company because I didn't die. It is interesting though, for some reason, starting with volume 16, Ariel is spelt differently. Like 7C's like, do you know how to publish a series? You usually set like standards. I'm at some point they started saying fate instead of destiny. And it's like, can you keep your translation consistent? Like, why is suddenly their spellings being changed? Certain objects or rule sets in the world itself, their names are being changed. Like, I guess they started doing that early on because they were saying things like the swordsmanship ranks and the magician ranks, they were being changed constantly. It was like going from like imperial to emperor to divine to god and all this kind of stuff. They were constantly changing it. It's like, have you ever published a series before? Do you know that you have to, usually terms and rule sets, you want to keep consistent. Anyways, stop ranting, Andrew, and just read on. You're not saying anything everybody's heard already. I'm fine with certain things like aspects and destinies and fates and all those things being interchangeable, because I think most people's complaints is because the web novel fans translate it one way and now 7C's translated a different way. It doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. As long as it's defined by the writer what it actually is, because aspect alone means nothing. It's what the aspect is pertaining to is what gives it definition. Because an aspect in this world is going to be different than an aspect to somewhere else. A destiny in this world is going to be different than a destiny in another world. The concept of a fate is going to be different in this book series than in another book series. It's what it means, but I want the translation to keep it always defined, or at least labeled as that, is my point. Anyways, moving on.
Depending on the circumstances, I can use her as a puppet.
Rudius blinked. This is a bit ominous. Rather than backing her, they'd be pulling the strings. The company he signed up for was actually super shady. If he wants her to become the king, obviously it's to become a puppet. If somebody of power is backing another person into power, it's always for the sake of benefit. Unless it's merely to just keep somebody else out of the kingdom. Say Orsted seeing that the first prince, if he becomes king, is a bad thing. Again, he sees a history that is yet to become. So it's not necessarily that he would see, I can't have that first prince become king. It's just in this memory, in this future that I've seen, I need to have her there. And yes, they've already laid out that things have been thoroughly destroyed at this point, as we're going to get into more here in a minute. I have to wonder if someone like Princess Ariel would really be so easily manipulated.
I say puppet, but I won't do something as extreme as manipulating her, as long as we can establish ties to Asura Kingdom in the future. That will be enough.
All right then. Orsha was probably thinking 100 years in the future, each small step altering history and reshaping the world another century. For example, persuading the princess to focus on magical research or strengthening the military. They could even lay the groundwork necessary to erode the entire kingdom if they wanted to. Wait, that last thought was disturbing. Are you sure it's okay to do that?
Of course. The history as I know it had Ariel as king to begin with.
Which makes me think that yes, possibility that Rudius or the man god being involved has basically broke that. Which yes, that's basically what Orsted said the moment they started this conversation. I look at this book, yeah, I don't know why he's changed things so much, but obviously he's changed it so that Ariel's not going to become king. And he's, technically right now, Orsted is realizing, now Orsted could have been involved initially, but he's obviously seeing, based on what this is saying, things have changed a lot. And I need to make sure it gets back in course. I don't know why he changed it this way. He doesn't know what would drive the man god to change stuff this significantly. Orsted doesn't see how this will benefit the man god. Rudius says it's still that he won't die, but Orsted's going, I'm not going to trust that's what he wants. He could be changing things for another reason. And so now I got to get back on course. But why I think of this immediately when I read this is, yes, Rudius being involved in this world has changed so much. For one example, Edis. She's supposed to, I think he mentions it later, she's supposed to eventually get with Luke and everything like that, and she'll eventually join Ariel at some point. Right now, the future that Oldius had wrote is that Edis, obviously, we already know, went up to the Sword Sanctum, she trained, and eventually she came down. What did she come down with? Rhaeda. Now, Rhaeda, I think, was supposedly already, I don't know if Rhaeda herself was originally an Asura. I do know that Isolde was in Asura, but it could be that the reason that Rhaeda is up here right now and will go to Asura is because she had to come up there to train Edis. Why was Edis up there? To get stronger for Rudius. So the only reason Edis is up there, the only reason Rhaeda came up there is because of Rudius. But again, I think they may have mentioned that Rhaeda was also in Asura already to begin with, because they said that's like the sword style of them. But yes, there's so much that Rudius technically has done, the butterfly effect, that essentially has affected the Asura Kingdom. Oh? I would love to hear more about this history, if you don't mind.
Very well. Originally, Ariel was to become king. Her course was protected by a strong destiny, as if it were predetermined.
A bit difficult for me to believe that, seeing as the way that she is now.
I am sure that's true.
Ariel's position only worsened lately. It all but seemed like she'd struck out with Predagus. This is why Sylphie was constantly busy, running here and there. They were trying their best, but it was an uphill battle.
In order for her to become king, Ariel requires the backing of 3 people. The first among them is the guardian mage, Derek Redbad.
That poor dude is still coming in the picture.
Derek was highly intelligent, and ambitious too.
He was technically the reason what drove her initially to go there, so it makes sense. Why did Ariel initially choose to go? Now, this is one of the interesting things. The thing in our timeline that drives Ariel to become king, presumably, because we haven't really heard in her mind a long time, the initial thing in our story, in our reading of this timeline, it was Derek, his death, that drove her to do it. The assumption is that if Derek didn't die right there, eventually he would push her to do it. Or presumably, possibly, her brother would possibly try to attack her, and then in response to that, follow what Derek says. But obviously in the timeline that he's going to go through, Derek doesn't die. Which, again, goes to the idea of the displacement incident caused his death. Possibly, the timeline didn't have the displacement incident. And that's the assumption already. Because when the displacement incident happened, Orsted said, what the hell is this? This isn't in the history that I know about. Who are you? Nanahoshi, what are you doing here? The displacement incident, no matter what, we've already established is not normal in this timeline that Orsted is seeing. And so, yes, it would make sense that Derek shouldn't have died then, because that boar that ended up in the garden was due to the displacement incident.
Ariel was destined to someday meet Petagoose, and it was Derek who convinced Petagoose to join her side.
Damn, Derek. Derek's solid, dude. Derek, it kind of shows just how influential this person was and how incredible he was that, like, right now, they're spending weeks trying to get Petagoose to join them, and he doesn't want to. And here's the thing. It makes me wonder, what difference is this? And again, I think this goes back to that discussion that we had a while back, or at least I was talking about with the meeting in the garden. And Rudius came there. It was right after Etof's battle. Rudius came over there, and then at some point, Ariel kept jumping in there and talking about how I'll make a statue for you. Hey, Petagoose, you want a statue? And he's like, I don't care about your statues. What it was sort of implying there is that Petagoose wanted her to answer a question. What makes a good king? He wanted to know what she wanted from this. And I said at the time, your response should be what Derek said. I called it. I called it back then. Say exactly what Derek wanted. Now, I think what I said then was that say that you made a promise to Derek and what that promise was. Promise to your people. That you wanted to do, that you wanted to save your kingdom. That you were doing it for them. Because I think what Petagoose was trying to drive out of her was the desire not to be king, but to serve her people and to better her kingdom. And that's exactly what Derek was saying in that chapter when they first introduced him. He was telling Ariel, in his mind, it was going through this whole process of talking about how this kingdom itself is flourished and they're drunk on their success, but eventually it will fall. These other kingdoms, they're getting better. The kingdoms up in the north, they're getting smarter. They're studying magic. The ones at the south, they're battle ready. They're stronger. Us? We're drunk on our success, and eventually, while we're drunk on it, they will come in and destroy us. He wanted her to fix that. Please, fix this kingdom before it dies. And I think when they eventually, if Derek did live, eventually, when he went with Ariel up to Petagoose, he would have been able to tell him all that. She will save that country. She will make sure it doesn't destroy itself. She will make sure that it doesn't stay corrupted. And I bet Petagoose liked that. I bet he said, Derek, you sound just like that old king. The one that he was asking Ariel about. You sound just like him. And that's probably why he chose to follow, not necessarily Ariel, but Derek. So cool.
Derek continued to counsel her after that, eventually leading him to take the position of Prime Minister.
And you're saying the displacement incident claimed the life of someone so pivotal?
Indeed. He was supposed to be protected by his own strong destiny, but he died.
That's kind of interesting. The idea that is pointing out how, I mean, Rudius even points it out himself. He says this meant that one's own destiny wasn't absolute, meaning that I could die too. It's almost like it's Refugian saying, okay, we bring up this destiny thing a lot, but I don't want you to believe that this is like absolute. Just because I say this does not mean it's absolute. Even somebody like Derek Redbat, who was extremely important, died. But no, this again kind of cements my long-going theory that the man god was involved somehow with that displacement incident. Now, I think, honestly, everything that we had with Nanahoshi's theories kind of broke that a bit, because what that sort of shifted it from was not necessarily that it was the man god that caused it, but it was somebody in the future, which I assumed at the time was going to be Nanahoshi, time traveling back into the past caused it, because it needed that reverse effect. They went into that whole cause and effect thing where her coming back there had to have some sort of send back, a feedback to be payment for it. So I'm kind of struggling with even still keeping the theory of the man god being involved with the displacement incident. The only reason I think it could be involved, or maybe at least he co-opted it, is the idea that it seems like the displacement incident broke a lot of things. Now, there could be the idea that this could be a misdirect the whole thing with Nanahoshi's hypothesis could be a misdirect, in the idea that Refugion's basically introducing this concept of time travel, them coming back in time, Nanahoshi being sent back in time, summoned, then sent back in time. And then the displacement incident happens with her coming back in time. And so you're supposed to think, well, okay, maybe that was, the whole thing with Nanahoshi being involved was actually what caused it. But it could be simply the idea that maybe the time travel and the effects that it caused could have been calculated. That possibly things like Derek Redbat dying is a part of the plan to eventually kill the man god. We just Orsted and Rudius doesn't know. And I know I'm going loose and fast here with all of the directions, but it's just different thought processes that I have going through this whole thing. But yeah, this meant that one's destiny wasn't absolute. Rudius supposed his fate was protecting him from death as well. But if Derek's bloody end was any indication, he couldn't let it get to his head. So what you're trying to say is we have to find a way to replace him, right?
No. If we are to make her our puppet, a prime minister would only get in our way. We don't need that.
Are you sure she'll be able to run the country without one?
Coming to the magic city of Shiraya helped her grow and change as a person. It won't be an issue.
That's interesting. Despite the fact that she's lost Derek, she, in doing so, has gained her own growth as a person. And they've kind of indicated that with the idea that, from Sylphie's perspective, during that whole situation with Fitz, yes, technically she was learning things. She was learning more about the world, and she was growing to be more independent. So it is kind of a cause and effect that's happening there. Whereas before, she was probably very dependent on Derek and his guidance. Now she sort of is getting a sense of the realities of the world, meeting people, and not just being cooped up in that castle. Rudius would have to take Orsted's word on that. He didn't want to play fast and loose, as it would bite them in the butt. But at least he wasn't telling Rudius to become the prime minister. He wasn't a brainiac like Derek.
The other key person is Eris Boreas Greyrat.
Eris? Rudius' eyes widened. She was part of Austrian nobility, but had no connections to Ariel.
Originally, the Austrian guard selected her for her skill of the sword. She joined their ranks, which was how she met Luke. The two were supposed to marry.
Something twinged in Rudius' chest. I can't really picture the two of them marrying.
It was love at first sight for him.
Seriously? What was Luke? A descendant of some hero? It made sense he'd fall for Eris, though. Beautiful face, huge breast.
No matter how many times she punched him in the face, he continued to pursue her, and that softened her heart. After the two married, they were extremely affectionate with one another.
Just like Rudius. When I read that, I'm like, just like Rudius. Because you remember way back in Volume 6, when it had Edis's perspective, what was the thing that she talked about? Rudius was different. Yes, it talked about the fact that he was pervy, was always wanting her or whatever, but the thing that kind of kept popping up was this idea that she punched him and punched him and punched him and punched him, and he would not leave. Unlike everybody else, she was afraid that she'd be alone for the rest of her life because everybody else, she would get mad and she'd punch him and then it would avoid her. But Rudius was different. He kept coming back to her. And she realized at some point, oh, this is the only person I could be with. And even the parents acknowledged that. Rudius is your last chance. If Rudius doesn't have you, you're going to be alone forever. And again, they were technically planning on just throwing her out to be an adventurer because she couldn't connect with boys. She was too violent, and she would just punch everybody. So yes, it makes sense that Luke doing exactly what Rudius did, pretty much. Now, granted, Rudius had the added bonus of the idea that she felt that he was powerful and smart and a genius. But Luke, I think, just being enough to be able to take that brunt from her, eventually, she opened up. Luke broke the Sundete. It's amazing what a man would do for a good-looking girl. What you would put up for a good-looking girl. Affectionate couple? It was true that once you wiggled into her heart, she showed her cuter side. Rudius felt cuckolded from this conversation. He'd have to grope her when he got home.
Well, it's a tale I'm sure you don't find any humor in.
To be honest, no, I don't.
I'll keep my summary brief then.
Rudius didn't care about how the history played out differently. Edis was for him alone.
The Eris Boreas Greyrat I knew was a skilled swordsman, though less so than her current self, but she still eventually reached the rank of saint. Despite her beautiful appearance and impressive stats, her fiery personality earned her the epithet Red Lion.
Red Lion? Instead of Mad Dog? I guess she still was a beast in the end.
Edis and Luke worked together to shield Ariel from assassinations numerous times, protecting her on her path to kinghood.
In other words, Sylphie assumed that role that originally was Edis's?
Correct.
What happened to Sylphie in this alternate timeline?
Sylphiette became Roxy McGurdy's apprentice, and later went on to become an adventurer. People tended to hate her for her green hair, but in the end, she conquered several notable labyrinths and made a name for herself as one of the most foremost dungeon explorers.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Now, when I originally this kind of came up, my mindset tried to go and play through the scenario there. And my original thought process there is that, yes, what was Roxy doing at this time before she met Rudius? She was looking for a place to teach somebody. And eventually it came up that, you know, there was needing of somebody to train Rudius, and that's why she went to Buena Village. And I was kind of curious at the time, well, maybe possibly that never happened, obviously. But eventually, her parents, seeing that she had some sort of skill in magic, eventually posted it for Sylphie. And then she came to Buena Village, started tutoring her, and then eventually became her apprentice, and she kind of followed her around. It's kind of an interesting twist there in the idea that instead of Roxy coming there and teaching Rudius, she instead came there and taught Sylphie. And that could possibly be because, you know, she never met Rudius, and she was always bullied, and maybe her parents were just trying to find some sort of outlet. Because, yes, in a lot of cases, the most learned people are often the most isolated people. Because when they choose to, or when they're just kind of bullied into the situation, is, yeah, they're kind of stuck alone, and so they turn to knowledge. And that could be something that Sylphie did. Because she was treated so terribly because of her green hair, she focused on knowledge. And that led her to be a skilled magician. Wow. And who did she end up hooking up with?
She hooked up with Roxy McGurdia, obviously.
I mean, yes, that's what my thought process went to. Roxy and Sylphie are single, and yeah, they just kind of came together there.
I am not having this conversation with you simply to satisfy your curiosity.
Reese's shoulders slumped before Orsid gave an exasperated sigh.
As far as I know, neither Sylphie nor Roxy ever married anyone. They lived the entirety of their lives as single women.
Interesting. Thank you for telling me. Reese figured that meant that they were for him and only him, which warmed his heart. It was nice to hear that after hearing Edis married Luke. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're for you and only you. It's just they never found somebody. They were destined to be with me, obviously.
Would you like to hear about the rest of your family as well?
No, let's return to the topic.
Anybody else you want to learn about? I'll satisfy your curiosity, boy. You want to learn about Luke? All right, let's talk about Luke a little bit.
As much as Rudius wanted to ask, the timeline he spoke of didn't include him. Knowing it didn't change the present. Okay, so if Sylphie took over Edis's position, there's no problem here, right?
Indeed. The fact that Ariel is still alive is proof of that. Although, having Edis by her side also meant that Ariel had support of Philip Boreas Greyrat and Saros Boreas Greyrat.
Reese noted in his head that Philip and Saros were casualties of the displacement incident as well, and their absence made the situation more dire. Okay, but you said there was 3 more people. Who was the last one?
Tristina Purple Horse.
Purple what? That was a name that Rudius had never heard before.
She is the daughter of a high-ranking noble, the House of the Purple Horse. She was kidnapped when she was 8. High Minister Darius Silvus Ganius has been keeping her as a sex slave.
That girl dead. When I read that, I immediately thought, that girl dead. Now, yes, eventually it kind of talks about something else, so that might not be the case, but yes, what immediately went to my mind was the fact that back when Ariel, in the first Ariel chapters, there was an assassin that was with Darius, and he eventually sent her off to kill Ariel. Now, that won't make sense if what Orsid is assuming based on the journal is true. The fact that this Tristina is possibly this person that was in the journal that he talked about. And that journal is an extension of the route that Rudius is in currently. So that means that whoever was the assassin back then cannot be Tristina. It could be if this person that is in the journal is not Tristina. And technically he does note that there's a lot of people that Darius does this to. That he brings them in and then eventually discards them. Darius rang a bell in Rudius' head. If you recalled, he was enjoying increased support and momentum in the kingdom right now. Reese was pretty sure that he was backing the first prince. But an 8-year-old? What a creep.
Tristina was going to be secretly disposed of, but fortunately, Ariel happened to save her. Even with his status, Darius could not escape reproach for having confined a daughter of the Purple Horse House for many years. He lost his position as a result of the scandal, which also marked the downfall of the first prince, Grabble.
Okay, so where's this Tristina person in this timeline?
Missing.
And you're sure she's not dead?
I am not. Darius has a habit of immediately scouring everything around him whenever an incident occurs. That includes disposing of his slaves, so there's a high probability she's already dead.
In that case, I guess we're better off assuming she's no longer among us.
Well, the one who trains and oversees these slaves for Darius typically sells off any that are marked for disposal in order to profit from them. Assuming the same happened to Tristina, she's likely to still be a slave, just with a new master. Or perhaps, if she's still young enough, she's learned enough skills to become a thief on the streets.
Orsted patted on the journal.
This female thief named Triss, who was mentioned in the journal, comes to mind.
Reese recalled there was a thief in his journal, but there weren't many details about her in there. That was more than anybody else. What I say back then, what I say when we were going to that diary, is like, essentially like one sentence summaries of every single day. And then suddenly out of nowhere, it gets to this one girl, and suddenly he has this big like 3-paragraph explanation about her. And it's like, everything else, like time travel and everything else, everything has been so massively vague in that journal. Except for this one Triss person. Suddenly out of nowhere, he's just got all the time in the world to write everything about her. And I'm like, there's a reason why it's going way out of its way to be overly explaining this character. This is going to be an important character. Note, like pin that one right there. One is the fact they named her by name. Typically, whenever he names a person by name, they're going to be important somehow. But going that much in a diary that's super vague, something's going on. Yeah, but the name Triss isn't exactly rare in Osra. Reese noted that Osrans had a preoccupation with names that ended in Riss. Things like Eris, which, yes, technically Triss and Eris I think is the only ones that I can recall. And granted, we don't really have a lot of characters to really go by, but yeah, that's only 2, Reese.
True, but as far as I know, there were no female thieves named Triss in that area. Plus, Tristina has a number of unique features that match up with the woman that is described in your journal.
Okay, so you're saying as long as we get our hands on her, we can take down the High Minister?
Yes, because she's a living witness of his crimes.
Why doesn't she just go back home?
The kidnapping was a cover story. In truth, her family sold her off.
Oof. Oof. So even though her family purposely sold her, you still think the news that she was kept as a sex slave would make Darius lose his position?
I do. As far as the public knows, she really was kidnapped. Besides, the truth is merely a pretense to taking Darius down.
That made sense. Darius had a number of enemies, and they didn't care the details of the scandal. They just wanted to get rid of him. Making news of him abducting a high-ranking aristocratic daughter would help strip him of his status. Yeah, they don't really care the details. It's just going to turn into this big debacle over something and not have the details around. This country is a huge pain in the butt.
Agreed. However, it's precisely because such devious people reside there that Osra holds most power in the world. It would be that way, even if the land they lived on wasn't so plentiful.
Rudis agreed. People who quarreled amongst themselves often developed better negotiating skills. This benefited them in the need of diplomacy. But Rudis knew his views on this were biased. That was like a self punch there. He's like, yeah, typically people that sit there and kind of quarrel amongst themselves get really good at negotiating. Yeah, I'm pretty good at negotiating. I did that a lot. And that kind of came to benefit him. I mean, especially with like the very first moments of the series, like how he treated Paul. He was very crafty in that regard.
Regardless, we'll be able to remove High Minister Darius so long as we have Tristina. With him gone, we won't have any trouble with the rest of the opposition.
Is he really that powerful of a figure? Orsted nodded.
He is. It's no exaggeration to say that the current king could not hold onto his throne without Darius.
So, he was like a kingmaker that laid out the groundwork for another.
If Ariel somehow fails to remove him from his current office, then it will be up to you to kill him.
What? You want me to do it?
Yes. You have a strong destiny of your own. It should be a simple matter for you to dispose of him.
Did his destiny really have anything to do with the fact that he can kill somebody? Come to think of it, the man god did say that he might be able to kill Orsted where others had failed. Yes? It's like one of those things of like, okay, so if this is the set destination path, and then you're like, just kind of take a quick detour and just kind of axe somebody right here, the destiny is still kind of pulling you forward to hopefully not have somebody kill you in the process or it destroy your destined path. Ruius had a long pause. All right, I understand. He didn't like the idea of killing someone, but if it meant protecting his family, he would do his best. His target was an evil minister anyways. Surely he could do away with someone like that. If his opponent was something insidious like a Zaku Gundam, he wasn't human to begin with. Yeah, this is that kind of gray area thing there. I mean, this is pretty much the same as with the man god having him kill Orsted. I'm not going to be hypocritical here. Yes, technically, with the whole situation with the man god told him, go kill Orsted or I'll kill your family. And Marius was pretty much feeling that he was forced that he had to go kill Orsted in order to protect his family. Now it's flipped. Now he's working for Orsted, and Orsted's saying, go kill this person. Now, Orsted hasn't said, or I'll kill your family, but that has already been previously established in the idea that I will kill you unless you come work for me. Rudius right here could say, no, I won't bloody my hands for you. And then Orsted could say, then I'll kill your family. He hasn't said that. Rudius is just assuming that I need to do this in order to protect my family. I think the main thing is that with the man god, he is being forced, being a tool of the man god, to kill somebody he doesn't really want to kill, well, he doesn't think he can kill. In the opposite situation here with Orsted, Rudius is working with Orsted to kill a common enemy. Rudius wants the man god dead, whereas back here, he didn't really want to kill Orsted. So it's a very different dynamic. So it kind of feels different in that regard, but it is still kind of in the same realm as the idea that I have to kill people for the sake of the ones I love. Except in this situation, he's equating it, he's putting a qualifier on there that, well, Darius is an evil person. I mean, what Orsted's telling me is that he has, you know, these tools for his own pleasure that are very young. So obviously he's a disgusting person. He deserves to die. It's kind of a weird different dynamics there. So in response, he's basically trying to dehumanize his target by saying, because it's kind of an object, it's an evil entity, it's not human. So it's okay. I can do it. I'm not defending Darius, by the way. I'm just trying to give a interesting thought process here in how you can dehumanize something and make it okay in your mind. It's like the idea of people sitting around watching an execution. You dehumanize the person by saying, well, they're a monster that maybe murder people or something like that, so it's easier for you to watch it happen. Whereas if an innocent person was put on in that same chair, it would not be comfortable to watch. But from everything that I've heard, isn't there supposed to be a second prince and his group of followers? You sure we don't have to deal with them?
You refer to second Prince Hoflust. He never had a chance to become king. He doesn't have it in him. And moreover, there are few who honestly think him capable of sitting on the throne.
Bruce wondered about that. Considering that he was a candidate, he had to be somewhat capable, so it would be better safe than sorry. As he thought about this, Orsted spoke up to reassure him.
There is nothing to worry about. Even if we fail, there is always next time.
Now, this is interesting because Rudius is technically making a good point here. And it's kind of funny that he doesn't point that out to Orsted. Okay, you said earlier that Derek was supposed to be there to aid Ariel into becoming king. That in your history that you've seen, Ariel becomes king. What's going on right now? What did that journal say? Ariel doesn't become king. So now you're making the assumption that this prince has never had influence and that he never will have influence. So he's not a problem. Now he does kind of mention, I think later on, that he's going to take care of it. He's easy to handle. If it becomes that case, he's easy to handle. But my mindset goes in the idea that so much has changed since the displacement incident. What's to say that the second prince hasn't put something into play? Now, Orsted could be keeping an eye on him and knows that not enough has changed that he would be able to get that position. He could be going on first-hand information rather than the history seen. But Rudius is making a good point here. He is a candidate in the end. If he's a candidate, then he's possibly able to actually get in there. And I think I don't know that the journal specified who these swordsmen that were there for. I think they said that one was there for the first prince, but I think they said that one was there for the second prince as well.
There's nothing to worry about. Even if we fail, there's always next time.
Next time? As in our next move?
Ah, yes. That's exactly what I meant.
And what will happen to Ariel if we fail?
She will die. I am sure.
I don't like the way this is worded. I don't like the way this is worded. If we fail, there is always the next time. Now, it could be that because Bruce is like, next time? Like, our next move? And then Orsted hears that and goes, okay, he might be thinking I'm talking time travel because, yes, we just talked about this book, and this book has time travel. So I need to make sure that he's clear that, yes, what I mean is the next move. I don't mean that we're going to time travel. But still, the fact that he's like, yeah. That's exactly what I meant. It does kind of make you wonder, like, is he really talking about maybe a reset? And then he's like, don't worry about it. If we mess up, we'll try again. It kind of gives a little bit credit to the idea that somebody, a dragon folk, would have the mindset of if we fail, we'll just reincarnate. That's the skill they've kind of produced. So death is kind of a little bit different to them. Failure is a little bit different in their mind. In the idea that all they have to do is go, okay, well, if I fail, I'll just reincarnate. But it could possibly be in their mindset that if they fail,
they might not be able to reincarnate because there could be nothing to reincarnate into in the future. But it kind of makes you wonder if that was in his mindset of like, not necessarily time travel, even though that could be fresh in his mind because of the book and the diary, but more so in the idea of, if I die, I'll just reset. But the way that kind of the flow of the conversation goes, it doesn't sound so much that he is deceiving Rudius, that it's more of an idea that what we get into in a minute is that, yes, in this process over thousands of years, he's had lots of failures. And he just, okay, that didn't work, try something else. And everything around them is sort of just they're all pawns that he's putting into play to see if it works out. And if it doesn't, all right, just try the next chessboard. It seemed that 2,000 years of life had made Orsted desensitized to failure. A plan that many years in the making had to have its share of pitfalls. You couldn't always get what you wanted, and if he was playing the long game for centuries, then it was probably inconsequential for him to have a couple missteps along the way. But still, he's like, but I'm going to be that misstep. The people around me are going to be that misstep. Can we not have missteps around me, please? But I like what Rudius does here. I really like how there's two minds here that I have with Rudius. Obviously, it seems like the majority of his mind share goes to the idea of, I don't want tragedy around me. I don't want Ariel to die because it's going to put Sylphie into danger, or it's going to hurt Sylphie. It's going to hurt people around me, and in a sense, it will hurt me. But I like the fact that in his way of convincing Orsted of this, of please don't accept these missteps, it is bringing up a very logical mindset here that Orsted can't agree with. If you keep allowing missteps, eventually you trip and fall. Don't keep throwing things at the wall to find out which one sticks, because eventually you won't have anywhere to walk. Let's not take chances. Speaking that flippantly will only bring a smile to the man god's face. Orsted's cheeks colored with rage, which terrified Rudius. He hastily continued, there may be other failures awaiting us if we don't commit ourselves now. Those failures add up. They might affect whether or not you're ultimately victorious or not. Rudius didn't mind the fact that he was more focused on winning than the path getting there. But if Ariel died, it was likely that Sylphie would get caught up in it. He's also going to introduce Ghislaine to Ariel. If those close to him suffered, Rudius would too. Instead, we should plan each step carefully. Let's keep our guard up and make sure that we're victorious every time we face off against him.
That goes without saying.
Orsted was still scowling, but then nodded in agreement. I am very curious about what actually made Orsted angry. Because they've mentioned before that there is certain people in the world that when you mention the name man god, they become enraged. And the assumption is that Orsted is one of those. But we've never had a case where somebody mentioned the name man god in front of Orsted. Even back when they first met, it may have been a mistranslation, Orsted asked if he knew who the man god was, and Rudius turned around and said, yes, he comes in my dream all the time. It wasn't that Rudius brought up his name and it enraged him. But yeah, the assumption right here is that mentioning the man god's name has enraged Orsted. And he's continuously angry. This entire rest of this conversation, he's continuously angry. But I kind of wonder if it's also an aspect of Rudius enraging Orsted by his comments. He's basically saying, you're speaking flippantly about this whole situation, and you're going to bring a smile to the man god's face. And that may have made him angry. But no, I kind of assume it's going to be the fact that he mentioned the man god's name. And I'm kind of curious how that works. This idea that just mentioning his name immediately brings him to mind and it makes him angry. If it's something that is actually instilled upon all, they've already mentioned in the previous chapters that yes, technically it has been instilled upon all of them to kill a man god. And so it could just be an aspect that just mentioning his name does bring him to mind, and they instinctually get angry. They want that thing dead. It's just bringing up their mortal enemy that they're destined to kill, and so it just kind of automatically makes their body react. Instead, we should plan each step carefully. Let's keep our guard up and make sure that we're victorious every time we face off against him.
That goes without saying.
Orsted was still scowling, but not in agreement. Now, with that out of the way, our first order of business will be to put Ariel on the throne. You'll issue your orders, and I'll carry them out. Does that sound good?
Yes.
I like how suddenly out of nowhere Rudius is taking control. He's like, I'm going to go off to see my boss. He sits down and talks with his boss. Okay, boss, what are we doing, boss? He's like, we're going to do this. Okay, boss, that sounds great. Now, boss, tell me what to do. We're going to do this, okay? All right, got it? All right, thanks, boss. So he just totally took over. Rudius felt like he earned a sponsor in Orsted. The renowned Dragon God Society was now backing him. Only downside was the work that Orsted forced on him, which was kind of a pain. All right, let's come up with a plan to deal with the second prince as well.
I can handle that myself. I need only overthrow the main nobles supporting him, since he has no desire for the throne to begin with. That will be more than enough to dissuade him from fighting for it.
There's it right there. I think he did know some pretense stuff, or he knows what nobles will eventually back him. And again, so I'm kind of curious if the second prince is actually going to be more of a difficulty than they're playing out to be. Reese realized as he was listening to Orsted that he probably didn't mind who became king. If Halfus took it, he'd probably simply infiltrate his inner circle. Well, yeah, again, let's go back to the previous point. He doesn't really care. I think there is something sort of in play that is further down the road that he's trying to sort of correct. And it doesn't really matter who's in play there. Nothing about that future possibly has anything to do with Ariel. Like her specifically. It's just they have to put something into effect.
In about a month, word should arrive that a current king has fallen ill. There's something we need to do before then.
What's that? His face was grim, making it clear he wouldn't permit mistakes. It was terrifying. He probably always looked that way when he was serious, but that didn't help.
We need to bring Pedigus Dola over to Ariel's side. His support will be critical if she is to take the throne.
Reese seen that coming. Despite the anxiety his words caused, Derek Redbat was destined to persuade Pedigus, but he wasn't here. That meant Rudius would take on that role that was lost by his passing. Good luck. No, I don't think this is that difficult. I don't think this is that difficult. No, I don't think he's going to go... He could, but I don't think he might go this route. But it could be simply just Rudius going up there and saying, hey, Pedigus, back Ariel.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you are. Orsted said so.
Okay.
Again, he's afraid of Orsted. Now, it could be one of those things where, yes, Pedigus is afraid of Orsted, but he's so set on his goal of taking down Laplace that he could refuse Orsted. Like, even Orsted. Even though he's afraid of Orsted, he will refuse Orsted. But again, Pedigus said that Rudius gave a better answer than Ariel. And it could be simply Rudius being at Ariel's side. He might trust Rudius more than Ariel. And if Rudius says, I'm going to be supporting her, he'll say, okay, then I'll back you. So basically, I'll need to spend the next month getting closer to Ariel and Luke, while also trying to talk Pedigus into joining her. Is that right? He brings it up right here, and I'm so shocked that this does not become a conversation. Like, right here, I assume that the next conversation, like the next lines after this will be, oh yeah, what about Luke? We've already established, and Orsted just read that journal, and what did that journal say? That Luke was working for the Man God. And so why would that not be a conversation right now? We just literally said, so I'm gonna get closer to Ariel and Luke, and I'm gonna work on Pedigus.
Yes. And oh yeah, by the way, in that book it says something about Luke. Be careful about that guy.
Now, from Orsted's perspective, he could not care. Like, he doesn't see Luke as being a threat. And technically, in the history that Orsted knows about, Luke is supporting Ariel, in a way. So, he might not see it being a bother for the current situation. And additionally, yes, he might not see a threat in Luke. And additionally, technically, from Orsted's perspective, any human can be manipulated by the Man God. And to worry about Luke specifically doesn't matter. If what we're establishing right here is the Man God can bring pretty much any human to his side and tell them to do something and they will follow it because he has this curse that will cause them to be influenced, they're assuming, he can get anybody. So worrying about Luke when you could easily worry about anybody doesn't make any sense. But yeah, working with Ariel and Luke and work on Pedigus.
Yes.
All right then. So a plan was set to change the present to alter the course of the future 100 years from now. To that end, they need to make Ariel king. That should be good enough for their first strategy meeting. Orsa then pulled a scroll out of his pocket and handed it to Rudius.
Take this.
What's this?
A guardian beast summoning circle.
Oh, Rudius was impressed that he kept his promise and fulfilled it so quickly. He assumed that he would prioritize the journal first, and it would take a while.
Pour your mana into it and picture something in your mind to protect your family. It can even be a word. That should be enough to beckon forth that which you required.
Will a picture that vague be enough?
Your mana pool is enormous. You will gain a better partner this way than if you try to specifically summon something.
I just hope I don't wind up summoning anything weird. You know, like a childlike girl whose title starts with demon and ends with empress?
What you call forth depends entirely on you. That said, Kishirika, Kishirishu possess an enormous amount of power. A summoning circle this small would not be able to bring her to you.
So size was the only problem. So a larger circle theoretically could call her? Not that he wanted to. She was obnoxious. I would. Yeah, that would... Kishirika is one of those characters where, like, you just love. Like, she's so fun. You love every chapter she's in is so much fun. But it's like, yeah, I don't know that I want her around all the time. I need some time to breathe. At any rate, I'll be sure to summon this guardian beast tomorrow.
Very well.
Rudius was excited. What kind of creature would he summon? Badass one, hopefully? Is standing next to him would make him look twice as awesome, enough to make Sylphie and Roxy fall for him all over again. A thought then occurred to him. That's right, supposedly one of my descendants is going to help you in the future. Does that mean I should have a bunch of kids just to be on the safe side? Or does that pose a danger for one of them to later give birth to Laplace?
None of your children will give birth to Laplace. Do as you like.
What? 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 Does that mean that has to mean that possibly? And again, this goes in that whole thing of like, I don't think you're realizing what you're saying earlier. What I'm assuming here is that Orsted knows, based on this history that he foreseen, that somebody else is going to birth Laplace. Somebody else, somebody way over here is going to. But we've already established that these family lines are different now. Rudius being here is an anomaly. And he could possibly produce the aspects that will come together to be the place in which Laplace is reborn. So it's like one of those things where it's like, how do you know that, Orsted? Are you going based on this extremely broken history that you know of? Like nothing, again, in your future or your history that you've seen, Ariel becomes king. And she's not going to, presumably. So why are we assuming that Rudius would not produce the child that would be Laplace? Understood. I'll do just that then. That means he was free to pump out babies. Surely Orsted would be pleased to have a large number of companions as well. In that case, allow me to excuse myself. I need to see how the summoning circle you gave me works out.
All right.
I'll see you again in the next few days. If anything happens in the meantime, please be sure to send a letter to my house again. By the way, my lord, did you already give Nanahoshi a visit?
No, not yet.
I know it's not really my place to say this, but if you're bothered by her helping me out to lay a trap for you, I hope that you'll have it in your heart to forgive her. I basically blackmailed her into complying. He didn't reply. His lips, a thin, narrow line. Reese didn't want them to have a falling out because of him. This is what I was talking about earlier, but you did. You did it, and you did it knowing that. This wasn't like a case of he didn't think about this. He thought about this. This is kind of one of those interesting things that happened when I was going through those chapters, and I was expressing my frustration. And I acknowledged several times that I understood why Bruce was doing it. I just don't like the fact that he's doing it. Because he is acknowledging what he's doing is probably wrong. He keeps acknowledging that he's technically misstepping here. One of the things that a lot of people were bringing up was this idea of, because he's so fearful about what's going on, he's in a panic state and he's not thinking straight. And I kept telling people, I don't think that's necessarily that's not necessarily the case all the time. When you're trying to write out a scenario of a character being so flustered they're not thinking straight, you'll see it in the inner dialogue. And the way that Refugian was laying out the inner dialogue, he was thinking about things. For example, him blurting out that Ellen Lace is pregnant. Somebody said, he's not in his right mind. He's completely flustered this whole time. No. Hold on. If that was the case, the entire time during that segment where he brings up Ellen Lace is pregnant, he would be constantly thinking about, the man god could kill my children at any time. The man god could do this. I'm afraid of the man god. I'm terrified. No. He was thinking about all this stuff. He thought it through. He had a stream of thought process to come to that conclusion, thus showing that he wasn't flustered at the time. He was thinking it through. I can understand that in a lot of cases where you have that panic, and it will often show in your mind, your train of thought, where I guess the best way to explain it is that your thinking process is very short term. Like you'll be going through the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and then you stop and you think about something because it sways your mind. So you go A, B, C, man, God, crap, gosh, A, B, crap, man, God. No, he's going through the alphabet. He's going all the way through it, and thus he has this train of thought. So when it came to the whole situation with Nanahoshi, again, he was going out of his way and fully thinking through the fact that what he's doing is bringing Nanahoshi into something that she herself, he felt bad about. Like he knew that what he was doing was wrong for her, that he's going to destroy that relationship, and that he's going to put her in danger, and that possibly if he dies, Nanahoshi's next. But he still did it. And now here he's going, crap, yeah, please don't be mad at her. Even though he went out of his way in order to cause it. I like that he's fixing it. Don't get me wrong. I like that he's going out of his way right here to fix that relationship, but he's already destroyed it. Like no matter what, you've destroyed it already. There's no mending this. You messed up. I like that he's at least trying to say that he basically blackmailed her. Like, don't. But again, from the mindset of Orsted, I don't think he's going to see something like, well, okay, if it's blackmail, then sure, I'll trust her again. No, that's not going to fix anything. With his destiny and this thing that he has sought out to do, that he is pretty much ordained by his bloodline to do, anything, even if it's blackmailed into doing it, cannot be ever trusted again. Because if it's done once, it could be done again. And then I think somebody like Orsted, with a path that they have, and anybody else in the bloodline, they'd be ready for something like this. They would be ready for the idea that there's a possibility that always keep people at arm's length, basically. Never bring somebody too close. Because anybody could be a tool to your enemy. Anybody can have what happened to Rudius happen to them, where their entire family and their life is being put on the line and threatened for the sake of killing him. Nanahoshi was always against me fighting you. She said you had done a lot for her. In fact, it seems that she still feels guilty about agreeing to help me. If you can find it within you to forgive her, I hope that you may arrange to meet her and give her the chance to apologize at least.
Very well. I'll do as you suggest. Nanahoshi is, for all her faults, a useful woman. There's one other thing. Well, I'm able to contact you at my leisure. It would be inconvenient if there was an emergency and you had no way of contacting me. Take this with you.
He placed a ring on the table. It was the ring that Nanahoshi had, that they used to lure Orsted.
Should the need arise, use this to call me.
When in use, the ring emitted a magical power that acted as a lodestone, leading its partner ring to its location. If it was a magical implement, they could turn it into some sort of radar. But sadly, it was difficult to replicate the effect of a magic item. There was nearly no duplicates in existence. Orsted returning this spoke confidence that he can put him down if he launched another attack. Or maybe it was proof that he trusted him to not try it again. Reese chose to believe the latter. He's like, he could be saying this just to kind of say, I'll kill you if you try again. Or he could be saying that he trusts me. I like the idea that he trusts me. I'm going to go with that. Orsted surely didn't desire to unleash his real power again and deplete his precious mana. If he was trusting him with this, Rudius couldn't disappoint. With that, Rudius pocketed the ring and took Zenoba home. Yeah, don't forget Zenoba. Take Zenoba with you. Really fascinating chapter. Really enjoyed it. Pretty much just setting up for... It's kind of funny because that's what I talked about in the previous Mushoku Monday, was I gave my theories on where chapter 6 or volume 16 would start off with, at least. It always feels like I can't really say where I think the volume's going to go, because sometimes these volumes go 5 different directions. But one of my theories was, yeah, he's going to go help Ariel next, or he's going to have... or Orsa's going to send him somewhere else. Same. It became the same. But yeah, chapter 2, Guardian Beast. I think chapter 2 was kind of a goofy chapter, so hopefully this will kind of be a quick one. It would be a month before Astra Kingdom would send out word that the king fell ill. Until then, Reese would work with Ariel to convince Pedagus to join her side. To that end, Reese needed to work with Sylphie to get all the details he could. However, thanks to the curse, her guard might be up, and he'd be unable to persuade her to bring him into Ariel's plans. He was torn whether to tell her the whole truth, or hide the fact that Orsted is involved in order to sidestep the curse. Now, here's the interesting thing, because I started questioning this in this chapter. And this idea that it's sort of implying this idea that any involvement with Orsted is making people fearful. And I've never seen that in the series up to this point. I've never seen some sort of indication that bringing up Orsted suddenly makes everybody distrustful. Now, granted, technically back when, like, for instance, when Eris was reading Isolde was reading the letter that Rudius had sent, he said that he's going to go face Orsted, and everybody became like, holy crap. But I don't know, it could be implying the idea that just merely bringing up his name or bringing him into a subject will cause somebody, based on the curse, to be fearful. But I think it could be technically the idea of them just not trusting him because of the curse. It's building a very interesting dynamic that is caused by the mere curse itself. It's not necessarily seeing Orsted and being near him, but merely bringing him up, bringing him into a conversation, bringing him into the picture of something that, say for instance, if Rudius came up to Sylphie and said, hey, I want to invite Orsted to our next birthday party. In Sylphie's mind, what she'd be envisioning is going, okay, he's talking about the birthday party, and then she's envisioning Orsted walking into the building. And just the thought of that produces that fear. And that could be based on experience. But there's a lot of people that we're going to go through and talk about here in a minute that don't really have a direct experience with him. And they don't necessarily mention that they're distrustful or fearful. So that makes sense, that it's just a mere, it's a PTSD to seeing him. Like, just merely the fact that they have seen Orsted at some point, they will always remember how terrified they were, and thus it will produce that distrust. So I think it's probably going to go into the realm of just merely having seen them and knowing how extremely powerful they are, they don't want to have anything to do with him. It's just a curious thing that's kind of popped in my head during this time. And yeah, technically would that come into play? If him trying to get Sylphie to work with him with Ariel, will she deny him? Now, granted, I don't know necessarily that Sylphie would be like, well, if it involves Orsted, I don't want you to be involved with Ariel, but yet I'm okay with you working with him currently. That kind of would be a massive negative to her perspective of trusting Orsted around her husband versus trusting Orsted around Ariel. But we'll see as it goes along how that kind of plays out. I'm very curious of how Rudeus will play into that whole scenario. But yes, I acknowledge here once again he's struggling with telling Sylphie the truth. But at least this time it has to do with the curse. Before that, he needed to protect his family. Since he'd be away from home a lot, he needed something in his place to protect them. That's where the guardian beast came into play. While it was still morning, Rudeus gathered the family in the garden. In a moment, I'll be summoning the guardian beast that will serve our family. Feel free to clap. Yay! The applause rang out from the crowd. The audience fervor was hitting its peak. Tonight's concert would be legendary. Hold up, Dillo and Bite? Why are the two of you not clapping? That just won't do. What? They're pets, so they won't clap? Well, I suppose it can't be helped. As for exactly what I'll be summoning, I'm afraid I don't know for sure. However, we can expect something particularly powerful, and this creature, whatever it is, will keep the family safe and secure. Sylphie spoke up. Are you sure this will be okay? That this thing will just eat us all while you're gone? That was a terrifying thought. Reese recalled the story a long time ago about someone who called forth a beast they couldn't control, and it killed everyone. Now, when he was talking about this, I thought he was talking about the one that Nanahoshi brought up, but that one they summoned something, and it depleted so much of the mana they couldn't control it, and it killed them. Not killed everyone. And the apprentice seen that, and that affected them. But maybe he's talking about a different story. I get that you're worried, but this was made by the meticulous hand of the Dragon God, which is precisely why I'm worried. Logically speaking, Orsted wouldn't use a roundabout way to get rid of him, but Sylphie was probably just not thinking straight due to the curse. Again, it keeps bringing it up right here. It's interesting. That said, he could use this to threaten Rudeus. Like, snap his fingers and cause it to devour his family. That didn't seem likely. In any case, I'm going to summon now. If it seems dangerous, we'll get rid of it. Together. And then I can give Orsted an earful. Edis spoke up, with enthusiasm and excitement, drawing her sword. Sounds good to me. When that happens, all of us will be able to fight Orsted together. Reese thought they wouldn't fight. Just file a complaint, like normal, dissatisfied customers would. If they tried to take on Orsted, they'd just be the ones kicking the bucket. That said, she did look awfully happy. She wasn't just looking for an excuse to fight him, was she? Anytime we bring up the idea of taking out Orsted, she's like, all right, let's do it. She's just ready to go. We won't be fighting Orsted, but we'll have plenty of chances to fight together in the future. I hope that you'll save your strength until then. Her face sank, as if the idea bored her. It was fine if she wanted to fight people, but Orsted was off limits. Reese didn't want to fight another hopeless battle if he could help it. Roxy then spoke up. Still, you really sure this magical circle is safe? Perhaps it'd be a good idea to have someone like Lord Pedagogus look at it first. Even Roxy was leery that Orsted made it. The curse sure was powerful. As absurd as the whole curse nonsense seemed, the intensity of their reaction made the existence impossible to deny. He wouldn't go so far as having Pedagogus check it, but Reese did take a second look at it. It seemed like a normal summoning circle. The part that restricted the conditions of summoning had some unfamiliar symbols. However, nothing looked suspicious. He could have Nanahoshi look it over, but that would be rude. Orsted made this for him because he didn't know how to make it himself. What good would it do to be distrustful? That is a good point. Orsted said, just summon something. And Reese is like, I don't know how to do that. And he said, okay, I'll make it for you. It would be different if Orsted say, you have to summon this. Here, use this. I'm sure it's fine. Well, if you say so, I believe you. But wait a second so I can get my staff. She wasn't entirely convinced. She said that she trusted him, but then she went to get her staff in case things got ugly. I have no idea why everybody seems so on guard, but you're sure this isn't dangerous, brother? Norn forwarded her brow. Aisha clapped her hand on her shoulder. Don't be stupid. If it were that dangerous, he wouldn't activate it with us around. Her trust was like daggers to his heart. He honestly hadn't confirmed that it was safe. Could he really use it like this? Perhaps wait until Pedagogus could check it. However, if he did, Aisha's affectionate gaze would turn to disappointment, and she'd be suspicious of Orsted after that. Again, there's a couple things there. Yeah, it's cute, the idea of Norn's like, are you sure this is okay to have us here? And then over here you have Aisha's like, don't be stupid. We're all around. Yeah, technically he gathered everyone, and this thing could produce something that just consumes, like it produces a Hydra and just starts killing everybody. But no, he can't back out now because Aisha just did that. But no, here's where I was kind of curious about if it's specifically not Orsted, the Dragon God. Those aren't things that produce fear in people. So the mere mention of his name and his presence does not cause fear in people. It is the fact that they have seen him before, that they have been in his presence, his physical presence. And that has sort of burned in their mind this fear and this distrust in him. So everybody that has seen him, Roxy, Sylphie, all of them are suspicious. But then other ones are just kind of trying to figure it out based on what's around them. Norn is seeing everybody on guard. Aisha's seeing that Rudius is okay with it, so thus we can trust it. They're making their decisions based on what everybody else is doing. Lilia spoke up with ominous words. Should the worst come to pass, I will act as a shield for everyone. Please, do what you need. It shouldn't come to that. But with everyone on edge, Rudius started to wonder if it would be okay. No, he'd have faith in Orsted. He's like, everybody's causing me to suddenly doubt this whole situation. All right, I'm going to use it. Everyone nodded. He then set the scroll on the table that he made with Earth magic and poured mana into it. He needed something to protect his family. If he was drained dry, it would be enough. He'd even take Orsted's mana pool if he could. But using more mana didn't guarantee a strong guardian beast. Still, he gave it his all. He needed to imagine what he wanted. Something to protect his family. That was awfully vague. Something incredibly powerful. Something normal opponents couldn't stand against. Something loyal that could never oppose him. Since it was for his family, it couldn't be crude or indecent. Tentacle monsters covered with mucus was a no-go. This guardian beast was going to be Lucy's knight. So, he needed something respectable. Why specifically Lucy's knight? That was the interesting thing. A creature of high moral character, loyal and strong. Come on out, guardian beast. The circle emitted a bright light, a mixture of blue, red, yellow, green, a whole rainbow. It felt as if summoning got caught on something, as if something was stopping it. What could it be? Ignoring this, he continued to pour mana. Whatever had been blocking the spell snapped. A voice groaned, though he couldn't tell where the sound came from. Was it the guardian beast that would be protecting his family? It sounded rather ominous, as if the creature was in pain. He increased the mana pool, yanking whatever it was through the summoning circle. A voice rang out as the mana flow that he'd been feeding it abruptly cut off. The light faded, and from within, it appeared. A man in a yellow mask and a white uniform. A large dagger hanging at his side. Perched atop the platform, down on one knee, with his arms wrapped around himself.
How can this be? How could my contract with Lord Pedigus be destroyed like this?
He lifted his head and looked around, mask obscuring his eyes. But Rudius could swear he was staring straight at him.
What is the meaning of this?
The masked man demanded. It was Armanfi, the Bright. I forgot what my voice was for him. But yeah, I had a lot of laughs at the little segment right here. It's so good. He was posed like a fallen angel. Not that he was making light of him. Rudius could never hold a candle to his brightness. He was more lit than him. Just kidding.
I ask you, Rudius Garrett, what your intention is here.
Leaping from the table, he tried to seize Rudius by the collar, only to freeze midway through. His entire body trembled. Edis immediately moved into battle stance, but Rudius held his hand up to stay her. Bad girl, go to your pin, Edis. So mean. What a disrespectful comment to make. No, this part kind of caught me. I was trying to figure out when I read this what exactly Refugien was going with right here. He leaped from the table and charged at Rudius and went to go grab his collar. But he stopped midway and trembled in fear. But then it said Edis immediately moved into battle stance. It doesn't say that Edis moved in there and drew her sword in his throat. My assumption here is that he went to go charge Rudius and to grab him, but then the fact that he is contracted to not harm him or his family, he couldn't do anything. He's mad at Rudius, but he can't do anything, and that's what's causing his body to tremble. The contract is affecting him physically. Not the fact that Edis, poured out some malicious aura to him and he suddenly became fearful. It's literally the fact that the contract made him stop. What was going on? He summoned the bright and noble Armanfi, of all people. Was this even possible? Despite his human form, he was actually a spirit. Perhaps this wasn't too surprising after all. Was this a ploy by Orsted? Maybe to provoke Pedigus and get him to kill Rudius? Again, like a very roundabout way of doing that. Like he's constantly thinking about all these plans that Orsted could be having to kill him. No, you see, it kind of happened. I was activating the magic circle that Orsted gave me, and it sort of summoned you here by accident.
Orsted's magic circle, you say?
What precisely are you trying to summon? A guardian beast to watch over my family. Armanfi snatched the scroll and studied it before gaping. These are some bothersome stipulations he's placed on the summoned entity. What conditions are they? The one the circle summons must be absolutely obedient to you, and they are to defend your family against any calamities that may befall them in perpetuity. In other words, they are to serve eternally. So this magic circle was basically a slave contract. Well, the good news is that Orsted didn't lie to him. True. Looks like he was trustworthy after all. Anything else?
The summoner will be the one who determines precisely what is called forth.
Then, I'd like to make an exchange.
An exchange?
Yes, I didn't mean to summon you, Mr. Armanfi. So, I'd like to trade you out for someone else. It's like, can I exchange this? It's like treating it like he's going to the Walmart counter or something like that. I think this one's broken. Can I get a different one? This one's a little bit too pricey or too rich for me. Can I get a saltier one?
Then hurry up and dissolve your contract with me. I am Lord Pedagus's proud servant, not yours.
Yeah, right. Honestly, Armamphi wasn't a terrible option for protecting them. He moved at the speed of light. If anything happened, he'd be perfect for relaying a message to Rudius. But Pedagoose values him too much. It could cause a problem if he took him away. Yeah, honestly, like, yeah, technically, Armamphi would be a really good asset. And technically, with how things play out here in a minute, I honestly wish that he kept Armamphi because I think Armamphi would be hilarious comedy for the series. Just constantly, every time he confronts Armamphi's like super mad. He's like, let me go back to Pedagoose already. And every time he goes to visit Pedagoose is like, give me back my Armamphi. Basically holding him hostage until everybody kind of works with him. So how do I go about doing that exactly? Order me to return to Lord Pedagoose's side immediately. Dot Path of Destruction will be able to sever the contract. All right, order me, now. All right, order me, do it. Due to the absolute obedience clause, he needed a direct order from him to leave. Okay, then by the power of this summoning circle, I command you to go to Lord Pedagoose and request him to... Send me back to him now. I am his servant. Okay, I'll do that. Go back to him now and get some information from him for me, okay? I command you to go to Lord Pedagoose and request advice from him on how best to call forth a good guardian beast. Armamphi kept the magic circle in his hands as he disappeared in a flash of light. He's such a troll. Like I said, this would be great comedy if he kept him around. It's just comedy gold. Armamphi's like, okay, good, he's gonna do it. Wait, no, and then flash. Sorry, everyone. Looks like I screwed up. Glancing to his family, they were all staring at him slack-jawed. For once, once again, Rudy's just doing something so casually with something extremely powerful and just not even blinking. Armamphi returned after a while with a message from Pedagoose. I'm sorry, I can't. Oh gosh. He hissed about how he was going to let this transgression slide, but never again. Armamphi was extremely proud of his status as Pedagoose's servant, after all. Reese felt genuinely guilty for stealing that from him, even if temporary. The circle Orsted drew apparently lost its power when the contract was annulled, so Pedagoose made him a new one. It was hard to believe he'd show that kindness after swiping his servant. I think it's one of those things where, what the hell happened, Armamphi? I felt you leave my presence. And he's like, yeah, Rudy has summoned me. He's like, what? And it broke my contract? What the hell is that boy doing? Yeah, he says he wants help on summoning another one. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. We'll fix this. I'll give him another circle, and hopefully he'll let you go. Like he has no choice. Pedagoose really was as magnanimous as Silvaro claimed. The terrifying part was the level of power Orsted's circle had commanded. Or maybe Rudius' own magic was to blame. Maybe both. Each was merely a spark on its own, but combined made a raging flame. Since the previous summoning hadn't depleted much mana, Rudius immediately went for the second. That was a question mark that I had with how this was working and how much mana he actually had to supply it. And he kind of implies here in a minute that he uses the rest of it with this second summon, which is kind of surprising that he didn't get white hair again, or unless his hair right now is still white. It could be. According to Pedagoose, he was better off not imagining vague concepts like majestic, omniscient, or omnipotent, but rather an animal. If that was all, Reese wished that Orsted simply said so. Knowing him, he probably would have told him to keep Armamphi. As crazy as that idea sounded. He's like, what's wrong with that? Keep him. Pedagoose has plenty. Okay, let's try this again. After surveying the area, he placed his hands on the circle again. He wanted something strong and proud, so a lion. He didn't know if they existed in this world as he knew them, but the word existed in language. Surely, there was something similar. He wanted a king of beasts, the strongest creature the world had to offer. If he wanted something loyal, maybe a canine rather than a feline. But that didn't matter. The circle requires absolute obedience, so he needed to focus on strength. He wanted the most noble beast that existed in the world. He focused all of his magic from every corner of his body into his right hand. For a few minutes, he squeezed his eyes shut. But as the last drop of mana left his body and poured into the circle, he snapped them open again. He sucked in a breath as the circle emitted a dazzling light. Same colorful rainbow from before, but he didn't experience the sensation of snagging. That would imply that yes, with Armamphi, it was because he was tugging at essentially Pedagoose's contract with him. So he had to yank that and break it. Instead, he had a sensation of a hand extending for him to take it. All right, come on out. A faint howl echoed through the air. Ah, woo! It grew louder and louder, ringing in his ears. He wondered if there was something that he should be saying as he summoned. Maybe it didn't matter. You gotta start that contract. The light disappeared, and before him was a white lion over 2 meters tall. He assumed it was a female, since it had no mane. The way his snout extended reminded him of a dog more than a cat. Wait, it was a dog. By its legs, it was a pup at that. The fur wasn't white, but rather silver. It looked like a baby Shiba Inu, but far more massive. Did he botch it again? It's adorable, Aisha exclaimed. But do you think this thing will really protect us? Norn said as she frowned. Well, for a pup, it sure does look confident, Sylphie said. Roxy nodded. At the very least, it looks too innocent for anyone to suspect that it's a guardian beast. It does look intelligent, Lilia commented. She had a perfect poker face, so it was hard to tell what she was thinking. She wasn't knitting her brows, or frowning at least. Zenith was expressionless as ever. While Rudy's had no idea what Bite thought of their newest member, Dillo was already on his back, expressing submission towards the new guardian beast. He's like, okay, here we go. Next one to take over the house. It wasn't bad for first impressions, but he was pretty sure that he'd seen this pup before. Ediston spoke up. Hold on, isn't this a sacred beast that was attached to you back at Doldia Village, Rudius? She's right. He just remembered. He then tried to recall the words in beast tongue. Are you perhaps a sacred beast from Doldia? Woof. The dog bobbed its head before licking his face. Ugh, he wasn't a piece of meat. At least he finally knew exactly what he had summoned. I see. The sacred beast, huh? The same one the Doldia tribe treasured and kept locked up in their village? Crap, if they'd found out that he had summoned it to serve as his personal guardian, they would be livid, right? Being on their wanted list would only cause more problems. Guess he had to exchange this one too. Go back to Walmart, exchange it again. But yeah, it's this is something that I think sort of has been in the theory book a long time ago. Back when they had the sacred beast kind of come into the picture, I honestly was kind of thinking, okay, since in my mindset back then was still in this thing that I'm still in now, this idea that Rudius is not the hero of the story. I've always felt like Refugian has been trying to go out of his way to give this feeling like Rudius isn't the main character, even though he's the main character. He's the main character of this series, unless it changes at some point. Chat, I don't need to know. Say, volume 21, suddenly Rudius dies, and then, one of his descendants suddenly becomes the main character that tells the rest of the story. But I think what happened back with the Sacred Beast, what it sort of gave me a feeling of is that there's this possibility that Rudius is the setup for the hero of the world. He is the grandfather of the actual hero. And that made sense with the idea of the Sacred Beast. The Sacred Beast was supposed to be this person that eventually one day, by their claim, the Sacred Beast would serve the hero. But even still, I kind of had a feeling that the Guardian, this Sacred Beast would show up at some point. I didn't really think it was going to be in the case of this, where it literally gets summoned to him, which makes you kind of wonder, like, at some point, like, him just being at the house, there's going to be, like, a beast folk that's going to walk by and go, holy crap, it's a Sacred Beast, what is he doing here? And then that word gets really quickly back there. And then at some point, here comes Persin is going to show up at his door, like, boss, you took my dog, I need it back. Sorry, I can't do that. Okay, anyways, we'll get into more of my theories in a minute. Although, he'd have to get another circle from Petagoose or Orsted, and there was no guarantee that things would go better the third time. Hey, third time's a charm. He's just going to keep on summoning until he gets something he likes. He's out there just kind of just expending all these things and going, yep, don't want that one. Yeah, don't want that one. Yeah, that one can't work. Nope, can't have that one. And then at some point, somebody's going to walk by the house and there's just going to be like a bunch of massive monsters and beasts that are just sitting outside the city. I had actually a sort of twisted thought. It was one of those thoughts where I had it and then I'm like, okay, that's kind of twisted. That, yeah, if he can think of like the most powerful beast, like putting aside people like Orsted that he's faced, that's obviously very powerful. What is the most powerful beast that he has ever faced? The Hydra. I almost thought possibly would he summon a Hydra? And you have this Hydra sitting outside the house. But yeah, that would probably bring back bad memories. He then spoke again in Beast God tongue. Oh, Sacred Beast, if I might humbly ask, do you possess the power to protect my family from any calamity that might befall them? Woof. He seemed to be saying, leave everything to me. He seemed motivated, but he had gotten himself kidnapped before. Could he really rely on him to protect them? That is true. Orsted assured him that the man god probably wouldn't come after his family much anymore. I don't remember that, unless it was just worded differently. But yeah, that technically could imply that, and the idea that he really technically has no reason to come after Rudius anymore. That plan failed. He used Rudius' family to pressure him. Now again, it depends on how much the man god told him is true. What if there is the possibility that his descendants never join him? What if that whole idea of Rudius' descendants joining Orsted is all a lie? Then he has no reason to go after his family. But the assumption is that that's true because that's what happened to Oldius. He killed his family, and at some point he learned the truth. But yeah, technically that path is gone. He could still want to kill his family members if that fact is true, but this is supposed to be the safeguard to kind of block that. Again, keep him on his toes. That was the whole concept that Orsted was talking about. Keep him on his toes. Keep putting things into play that he has to counter, and he's constantly on the catch-up, rather than we're constantly on the catch-up and having to defend. Arf? The Sacred Beast leapt from the table and pressed against him, licking his face. Oh, he's so soft. They definitely were using some kind of conditioner on him. Now that he was their guardian beast, he'd be able to enjoy this fluffy fur every day. Yep, I've got to be mistaken. This definitely isn't the Sacred Beast. Just tell yourself that. Yeah, it can't be. It can't be. And if they show up, be like, I didn't know it was him. Nope, it wasn't the holy creature the beast folks looked up to in reverence. Nope, there was no way their protector god would show up here. It had to be a lookalike. Yep, this was a lion. That's what he told himself. Although, that excuse probably won't protect him from the wrath of Doldia. Well, if things went sideways, he could just ask Petagoose for a favor and swap the lion cub for something else. Again, so Petagoose is going to be the Walmart counter. Until then, they'd have a trial period of sorts. All right, from this day forth, your name is Leo, he proclaimed, thrusting his hand in the air. The beast licked his fingers before snorting in response. Then, suddenly, Leo lifted his head as if he noticed something. His gaze turned towards Roxy. He trotted over before promptly shoving his face up her skirt. Ack, what are you doing? Roxy cried, bonking him with her staff. Their perverted canine merely sniffed and licked her leg before wrapping its body around hers. Rudy, what am I supposed to do about this? Nervously, Roxy peered at Rudius. He had no idea what was going on exactly, but it was clear their new family member was attached to Roxy. This is where I think things are going to be okay. Again, this goes back to that whole discussion back in the Dolia village. This idea that the Sacred Beast would eventually go with the hero. And they asked the Sacred Beast, is he the one? It shouldn't be, because the time's not right. It's too young. It's too much of a pup. Eventually it's going to grow up, and then it's going to go with the hero. I think it's, yeah, I want to say because Roxy's so great. Roxy is amazing, and the Sacred Beast understands the wonders of Roxy and the Roxy Pantsu. But no, I literally think this is him sensing, I wanted to say smelling, and I just said it, sensing Roxy's baby. The baby is possibly the hero that the Sacred Beast is supposed to follow. I think it senses that's the one. She is carrying my future master. That's my theory. But yeah, in Volume 5, they specifically say that it is a beast that only appears every so often whenever the world is actually going to face crisis. And when it reaches an adult age, that's when it follows the hero that will basically save the world. And that sort of lines up with everything they've been building up right now with the Man God and Reese's descendants that will join Orsted to fight the Man God. If that is that catastrophic event that we'll be seeing. So very interesting to see that. And like I said, it sort of ties in. And I've kind of peeked into Chapter 3, and the fact of the Sacred Beast kind of following Roxy around so attentively, again, my inner love of Roxy's side wants to say it's because it's Roxy and she's amazing, but I think it's probably going to be more an idea of Roxy's child. That child is possibly this hero. And that would make sense to the legend of the Sacred Beast, because I would assume, even as half Magrudian, their child might actually live for a long time, and they would be living to the point where that beast would actually be old enough that it would fight whatever thing they're going to face. So really cool. Really cool to think that's possibility of Roxy's child. And yeah, the sacred beast knows where it's at. Just straight up skirts her. Anyways, Ryu spoke again in Beast God tongue. Leo, now that I've summoned you here, you're my servant. Your duty is to protect my family, understood? Woof. He had no idea how useful Leo would be watching over everyone. But since this is what he has summoned, it would be their guardian beast going forward. Surely, he'd prove worthy. It kind of makes me wonder, is a possibility that he can have multiples? Like, what does it say that he can't have multiple guardians? Yes, Orsted told him to summon a guardian. He doesn't say summon guardians. But yeah, what's to say that he can't have multiples? That way, if somebody does leave the house or whatever, they can always take one with them. Just have a whole bunch of sacred beasts. Just have a whole bunch of them. A bunch of fluffy Shiba Inus just kind of walking around. Japan just loves their Shiba Inus. They just love them. They are really cute. Leo, allow me to explain a bit what your employment here entails. I know you're used to getting your way and having people spoil you, but that won't fly here. You're going to have to wear a collar and live in a doghouse like a normal canine. If anyone suspicious appears, you bark at them, bite them, and render them powerless. If they're too strong, you have my permission to kill them. You'll have 3 meals a day here, and you're free to take naps whenever you want. If you so desire, we'll even take you for walks when you want. If you find these conditions acceptable, please bark once. Woof. It's not like he has a choice. Again, the summoning circle dictates that he's going to follow you. That was the kind of answer he liked to hear. Oh, also, it goes without saying that if you dare to do anything that hurts my family, Orf! His throat rumbled, as if he was offended by the mere idea. Great. Then our contract is sealed. Now, let's shake on it. Reese held out his hand to a promptly offered paw. And with that, their family had a new pet. Their family had a sacred beast. Yeah, like I said, I should have seen that coming from a mile away, that he would probably summon the sacred beast. I couldn't really think of anything else that would be like, unless it's just something completely new. Like, boom, this thing is here. Rejured summons Rejured. That would be so freaking great if he summoned Rejured. Rejured just pops up and goes, "Hey, Rudius, I just finally found one of my own people. What am I doing here? Oh, sorry, dude. Here, let me go to Petagoose and exchange you again." Yeah, Rejured would have been really, really, really cool. But yeah, it makes sense, the idea of having like some sort of beast or companion that would come to the house. The sacred beast was kind of just sitting there waiting. So I did have kind of a thought of that being the possibility. But there you go. He now has a big fluffy fluff-waffu hanging around in his house. But yeah, that's chapter 2. I pretty much got all my theories out. Like I said, that the beast folk, if they ever came there, I'm probably gonna. That goes to what I was talking about there. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I don't think it's going to be a problem that he has the sacred beast. Even if somebody comes by and goes, "Holy crap, what is the sacred beast doing here?" They said he was missing. I got to get word back to them. And like I said, Percentage shows up and is like, "Dude, we need our beast back." There might be a possibility that when they ask, and it kind of sucks that he doesn't ask, because he seemingly can understand what the sacred beast is saying. They're probably going to say, "Hey, come back, sacred beast," and he's going to be like, "Well, it's under contract, but yeah, I guess I can break it and he can go back with you." But I think what's going to happen is that the sacred beast is going to say, "No, she's carrying the one. I'm not going anywhere. She's carrying the one." If that theory of mine is correct. So I think it probably won't even be a problem, even with if and when the beast folks finally find him. So kind of interesting. It was so funny because I kind of thought that when he was saying that whole thing where he's going, "No, it definitely can't be." No, the train of thought there is that literally Rudius is trying to talk himself out of returning the sacred beast. He's like, "It's too fluffy. I can't return it." Really cool. So anyways, yeah, that's, again, chapter 2, really fantastic 2 sets of chapters. Excited to see what goes on with chapter 3. Again, I kind of snooped a little bit into it. So I'm really hoping that I'm just having a feeling like this next chapter is probably going to be where things start to get really heated up. So definitely looking forward to jumping into it. But as per usual, thank you guys so much for coming by for this Mushoku Mondays. Thanks, chat, for everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey, chat, hope you guys are doing very well. As per usual, greatly appreciate everybody's and their support monetarily, kind words, all that kind of stuff. Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. Really greatly appreciate it. Again, last week, had some crazy little support there. Again, as per usual, thank you so much to Noah, Javier, and yes, Gearless Moda. It was so great. I don't know if Gearless meant to do that, but yeah, the previous Mushoku Monday, I recorded that I thanked Gearless for the great super chat that he gave, and then right when that came up on the premiere, Gearless did another super chat the same amount. So I don't know if he planned that it would go off right when I thanked him for it, but good timing. I don't know if he had it like all preset and everything. But yeah, thanks so much, Gearless. That means so much to me, dude. It's just, again, words cannot express how much it means to me that you guys support this channel and keep things going. It keeps the lights on and keeps me doing this. And it's sad to say that I'm thankful for that, but at the same time, Mushoku Monday is just as much of a blessing to me as it is to other people. But even still, like, all the kind words from people. Recently met one of the people that watched Mushoku Mondays through Discord, and hearing from people that this brings them joy, like they're in a bad place and this encourages them or gives them some sort of release and some sort of reprieve from what they're dealing with. That stuff, it means so much to me. I've technically had comments like that before with people through our podcast or through, YouTube when I first started up. But to know that I can bring people joy and bring them some sort of entertainment, and yes, this is all stuff that pretty much 99% of people that actually watch this have already read through, but they want to see my reactions and my crazy theories and the stuff that I go through on a chapter by chapter basis. But it means just as much to me as it does to everybody, because this has been an absolute blessing to go through. And but yeah, sappy stuff aside, like I said, thank you so much, guys. But yeah, until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. That was the kind of answer he liked to hear, and render them powerless. Render them powerless. The same one that Dolia tribe. What I want? I'm not. It looked like a baby Shiba. It looked like a baby Shiba Nun. Was it the guardian beast that could be protecting a creature of high moral character?